Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast, where we explore personal development, spirituality, and science. I'm your host, Kris Ashley. And today we're going to talk about self-talk and shifting belief systems through them, which is something I'm very passionate about. I write about it in my book. My guest is an expert. So I imagine we are going to have a really enlivening conversation today. First, a couple quick announcements. Head over to the links in the show notes. You are going to find ways to sponsor the podcast. You're going to find a link to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. It was endorsed by Michael Beckwith, Bob Doyle, Marcy Shimoff, all three of whom were in the film The Secret, if you're familiar with that. It was also endorsed by John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and Anita Moorjani, who wrote Dying to Be Me. And let's see what else. You'll find ways to connect with me on social media. You'll find links from my wonderful guest as well. And as always, this podcast is part of the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network. Sounds kind of funny that a newspaper is part of has a podcast network, but they have launched an amazing personal development branch. We have live events pretty much once, twice a month, virtual and in person. I was just on stage with Les Brown, Mary Morrissey, Sharon Lecter, Joseph McClendon. So there's just so much happening. Please stay connected with us. All right. So with me today, I have Ben Milston. So Ben is all about empowering spiritually minded purpose seekers to break free from self-doubts and fears, to embrace their true self and create a life of true happiness and inner peace. So welcome, Ben. I'm glad you're here with me.
Hey, Kris. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Where are you joining in from again?
I'm coming in from Australia, up the coast, East Coast.
Amazing. Isn't it cool that we can be a world away from each other, half a world away, and still be having conversations like these?
Definitely. I'm looking at you in my big down, and you're in your singlet sleeveless, and I'm a little bit.
I know. Is it still winter there? Is it still cold?
It gets warm during the day, but the nights and mornings are very chilly.
Yeah. It's starting to get chillier here in the evenings and mornings. But like by chilly, I mean like 60 degrees, 50 degrees, which I don't know what that translates to in Celsius, but California problems. Cool. So I would start my shows off the same way, and that is by asking my guests to share their origin story. So please share with myself and listeners what it is that put you on this path to become a coach helping people.
All right. Thank you. So I like to start by saying that I'm really grateful for having gone through about 12 years, 13 years of super heavy depression growing up. Growing up in an academic family and going to a school where it was very heavily academic, and I just couldn't meet the cut, let's say. And so that just brought in a lot of kind of pressure to be someone that I wasn't going to be, to end up in society, going through university, and had just a lot of pressures from surroundings about who I could be or couldn't be, on top of being diagnosed with learning difficulties and dyslexia and ADD, which I'm sure there's a lot of people can resonate in school. If that's something that we are diagnosed with, the feelings or the want to actually continue studying or knowing how to study kind of goes out the window. And then we're stuck in this field, or at least I was stuck in this field of, well, if I can't succeed here, then I'm not going to succeed in life. I'm not going to be able to amount to anything. I'm not going to be able to be anyone or become anything that this world needs. And that kind of just spiraled me. That led me to substance abuse for about 10 years. I attempted suicide a couple of times. And that was a period where there was no way out that I could see. I didn't want to let my family down, and yet everything I was doing in my life was letting them down, letting myself down. And it was this kind of idea that everything that I was becoming was letting everyone else down, and that's just who I was. It was then that I kind of broke away from society. I moved countries. I went and needed to get out. And for a while there, I was kind of picking up the pieces and understanding, okay, maybe I just needed to get away from Sydney and that kind of bubble there. But as it is, we can't escape our problems. And so it didn't matter where I went or what I tried to do. I continued to kind of fall back into old habits and old thoughts. I came across when I was like really going down again the rabbit hole, and it got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to find a way out because I can't keep doing this. This is not working. Whatever I'm doing, I'm not doing it right. And I came across the book Power of Now, which you may be familiar with. And that was my first kind of realization that, hang on a minute, my thoughts are actually the essence of what's creating my depression and my anxiety, my low self-worth. The way that I perceived my world, the way that I internalized situations, my experiences, was actually what was causing me to be afraid of what people thought, be afraid of the judgments and the rejection, and not feel like I was worthy, not feel like I was smart enough or good enough. And that if that was if my thoughts were as powerful enough to be able to bring me to the brink of suicide, well, then they must be powerful enough to also take me out of that and onto a different path. We fast forward a bit of the past 10 years, I traveled hitchhiking in Europe, and I went on a horse caravan in Mongolia, and I went to different eco-villages and conscious communities around the world, really just trying to understand that this world that we live in is so much more vast and greater, more beautiful than the kind of limited understanding of the world that I'd been brought up in. And I think a lot of people kind of are brought up in this idea that the world is the way that they know it to be, when the world is just so much bigger and so much more grand than we've learned, that we've been taught, that we've experienced. So it was about a year and a half ago now that I came back from South America with my wife. We got pregnant over there, and I was kind of thinking like, okay, I know that I will find whatever is my passion and my calling in life, but I still don't have it yet. I don't know what it is yet. And I've kind of like gone through all these experiences and this massive transformation, but I still just haven't hit on something yet. And so I decided to do another online course in NLP, and then, it kind of popped up to do coaching. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Everything that I've been kind of going through, all these transformations, all these this journey, I've done courses, and I've done, read about 30 books on self-development, have all kind of been leading me to the point where I've been coaching myself, essentially. I've been getting myself into a place where I feel confident and comfortable in my own skin. I really want to help people do this, because this isn't, there is so much that we don't know. And if we're able to have, someone else who's been through, the hell and back, to kind of help mentor and lead other people to a place where even just there is a possibility for more, there's a possibility for growth, is a massive step for, I think, a lot of people. And that's kind of how I got into the place that I'm in at the moment as a coach. I love speaking about self-talk, especially because inner critic is something that comes up for a lot of people and is just such a massive topic. And once we understand our self-talk more, we understand that internal dialogue more, we become more compassionate with ourselves, we become more loving towards ourselves. And that kind of just opens up the world for so many new opportunities, possibilities, and it's exciting to be able to share that with people.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I relate to a lot of it. And I think the reason that I ask everyone what their origin story is because everyone kind of has the same story, right? They've gone through it themselves. They've been through their own trauma, their own tragedy, their own heartbreak, and they've come out the other side, and they want to help other people not have to go through what they did for so long, right? They want to give back, and they want to like share the wisdom that they have learned. So I think that's why I ask people to share their origin story, so that people going through it, people that are in it right now, in that dark night of the soul, they know that there's light on the other end of the tunnel, and that, you can not only survive it, but you can also thrive from everything you went through. Because once you're through it and you look back, everything is a lesson, right? Everything happened for a reason. And you started off your entire story by saying you were so grateful to have gone through depression. And I just love that, the way that you frame that, because it's all perspective, right? My own book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, is about that. It's like literally anything that you're going through, there's so many other ways to look at it and see it in these stories that we tell ourselves. And that really lines up with self-talk. And I also appreciate that you sought out other ways of living life on earth, and saw how other people are going through life, and realized that there's so many other ways to live life other than what you were brought up with, right? And I think that's so true. I think people, especially in the Western world, think, oh, this is life, right? And that's the beauty of travel, right? That's why travel is so important. So I guess the next question would be, how did you start to shift your own self-talk? I know you said you read Eckhart Tolle and some other books, but like, what was the process of reprogramming your mind? Because a lot of that happens unconsciously, subconsciously, right? Sometimes people aren't even aware of their own self-talk.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, the beginning stages to any kind of change comes with building an awareness. Because without that awareness, like you said, it's all just kind of subconscious programming. And so first, it's so important to just become curious with what is happening inside the way that we start thinking about things. Become curious to the way that we feel, and ask questions such as, well, why am I feeling this way? How am I feeling like this and not something else? Come back to, and I came back to the kind of understanding that everything in my life, every way that I was feeling, was a reflection of something going on within me. So I took the blame of society, or the blame of somewhere else that I had on for so long, and took that responsibility of, okay, well, if this is my own doing, if there's something going on within me that is causing these kinds of emotions, well, let's try and figure that out. So I started with, whenever I felt anything negative or fearful, or anything kind of that I didn't want to necessarily be feeling, I would take a moment to just try and understand, what am I feeling, firstly, because I think a lot of people don't actually know what they're necessarily feeling, but also, where is this feeling coming from? What is it within me that is causing this? And it's so important to be able to start building that awareness for the type of thoughts that we may be having that are causing this. So they may revolve around, looking for blame. They made me feel like this, or they said that. Okay, what is it within me when they said that? Why do I feel this way? So that we can begin to crack that open as to what's happening within. So I think curiosity is a massive, great first kind of starting step. And then from that curiosity, just opening up to the possibilities of, like you said, other perspectives, other, ways to see situations. So I would constantly be questioning, well, how else can I be seeing this situation? Or, trying to step into someone else's view. So they said this, why would they possibly want to say that? What are they going through that might cause them to say X, Y, or Z? With an understanding that I think everyone is just trying to figure out life in their own way. Everyone's got their own world, their own, knowledge of life, and everyone's just trying to express themselves and be loved and feel community, and everyone's trying to do the best that they can with the resources and knowledge that they have. And if we come from that place of, well, actually, the bully is probably suffering more than I am if they're going to a point where they feel that they need to build themselves up to bully someone else, then it also opens that kind of curiosity to, well, how are the people around me experiencing? How might they be experiencing going through their own kind of world? And that offers a lot of insight into if it feels right to feel the way that I'm feeling, or do I feel maybe compassionate towards someone else rather than feeling victimized?
I love everything you just said so, so much, and I'm over here nodding, and it's funny, like, this topic keeps coming up on my show, and so just to give you an example, yesterday I recorded 2 shows. One was about with like a finance guy who has financial freedom and retired at like 40, about money mindset. And then the next one was about with one woman whose husband committed suicide a year ago. And both of those conversations went to, it is so almost trendy right now in society to be a victim, right? Because especially on social media, right? Because um it's so easy to blame outside events and other people for your suffering, right? Like you said, like you took your own blame off of society. And it makes sense why people do it, right? They get pity, they get attention, they don't have to do their own inner work, right? They don't have to feel guilty, they don't have to take accountability. But what they don't get to do is step into their own power, and they don't get to heal, right? And they don't get to, you know, the other thing I love you said is they don't get to feel that compassion towards other people, right? And maybe that bully that you can feel compassion towards, like maybe by being the bigger person or offering a loving response, like you can help heal that person, right? Like all of this is just a ripple effect in the world. So, I appreciate that you said, what are they going through that caused them to see things that way or say things like they did? Because the thing is, like, you don't have to be right and make anyone else out to be wrong. Like, newsflash, right? Like, those are just workings of the
Yeah.
ego, right? Like that is not a requirement. And especially as someone who like studied NLP, it's all about understanding the other person. That's how we build meaningful relationships, right? And make people feel seen and understood. And it's not just about us. We don't live in this bubble, right? We're connected to everyone. So I like that you said you started with like what's happening within me, right? Like what's happening within me that made me react in that way or that made me feel those feelings. So does this always trace back to like something from childhood, or like what's your experience been like? Like when you ask what's happening within me, like what's the root of all of that?
Right. And I think what's really important is recognizing that things definitely, uh, a lot of things stem back to childhood, because that's kind of one of the places where our core belief systems, our core ideas about who we are and what this world is, what reality is, the way that we should respond or react to one another, kind of gets formed. And so there's going to be a lot of belief systems in there. When I talk about belief systems, I talk about specific ideas or concepts that we hold to be true, we accept to be true, but aren't necessarily true. There isn't necessarily truth in them. That's why they're still a belief, but we accept them as truth. And so there's a big distinction between fact, which can be almost impossible to actually ever prove, to a belief system, which is the structures that we identify with, or the type of concepts and ideas that we hold to be true about who we are in this world. And so when we look at our history, when we look at childhood, when we look at, it could be a incident that we had last week, in all fairness, but most of our belief systems about who we are form when we're, going through school, adolescence, as a kid, young kid, and even, there's a lot of studies to show that in the first 7 years of being born, there's so many kind of belief systems about what this world is and what we're capable of or who we are is formed, and that kind of, stays with us. So yeah, it's really, I think, understanding and internalizing where, and I think, and I say where, but it doesn't necessarily from experience need to be where in our history something comes up, as much as where in our mind, or what triggers things come up that we say certain things. So for instance, there is a big I think kind of struggle that most people have surrounding self-worth, right? And this tends to be because when we were kids, there was a lot of pressure on us to be a certain person, to act a certain way. We had, we would do things to please our parents. We would do things to please, the people around us. We tried fitting in. And so we would want to act a certain way. And so there was constantly, being grown up in a society where we needed to try and understand how to act so that we were accepted. And that kind of allowed or made it problematic for wanting to express our true self, because we would be fearful that our true self wouldn't play the power of, up to the standards of our parents, or up to the standards of the kids around us or at school and whatever else. And so when we understand, okay, it's coming, say, that from self-worth, yes, we can look back into the history of where that might be. It could be from a parent, it could be from a teacher, it could be from schools, which is super important to understand on a whole. But I think if we're wanting to understand how to move forward, then it's also recognizing the times in our life now where we may feel unworthy, and seeing, well, how can we change those kinds of thoughts? How can we shift those thought patterns that we have now to something that is going to be more beneficial, serving us more, moving forward with our life? Because, and something that comes up a lot, is that the idea that if someone's been, the last 40 years thinking the same things, can they change that? And I think, one of the biggest reasons why we can change after 40, 50, 60 years is because there's a lot of work that, say, needs to go into healing our past, but it's also in rewiring and reprogramming the brain from now into the future. And that kind of instant can be a lot easier, a lot quicker. Saying, if we were to try and learn an instrument and we practiced every day for 6 months, we would get incredibly good at that instrument, even if we hadn't been playing that instrument for our entire life. And so I kind of see it very similar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And it's cool that you were talking about the first 7 years, because it's been proven that kids under the age of 7 are in a theta brainwave state, which is literally hypnosis. Like when we say kids are programmable, they're literally programmable. They're sponges. They're just downloading everything. So, the opinions of the adults you grew up around is a huge thing. And like you said, friends at school and just kind of society pressures. The other thing I wanted to add is just about belief systems, and how you were talking about how, like, they're not true necessarily. Like if you look in the thesaurus, one of the antonyms for the word belief is truth. Isn't that wild? So it's literally the opposite of belief is truth. And I love that. And I always go back to that. So everything you're saying totally makes sense. And if someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, I got it. Like I've been going through difficult times. I'm feeling unworthy. I know my self-talk is bad. I'm aware of it. Like, what are some tips to actually reprogram that? Like, how do we like something that listeners can take away today to reprogram self-talk or belief systems, or both, because they're kind of hand in hand, right?
Right. So I think what's first really important to understand, because a lot of people, when they think about their negative self-talk, that inner critic, that they want to quiet it or shut it out, or not have it there. And it's important to understand and recognize that that inner critic is always going to be there. It's a part of who we are. It's something that we have. It's not about necessarily trying to shut it off. It's about learning to speak back to it, learning to love that side of us, learning to be compassionate towards this voice, and understanding also where it comes from, to see it in a more lighter kind of manner. Because a lot of people will hear that self-talk, that negative self-talk, and think, this is me, this is who I am, this is my voice, when that's just a fraction of the voices that are going on inside of our head. And so what's so important is, and we spoke about this at the beginning with conscious awareness, is to constantly be challenging the type of subconscious programs that we have with conscious thought. And so when I say that, if we think, for example, and I'm saying in my head, I've got this, that's something that we can consciously say. Even if that's not something that comes automatic, we can consciously say that. And so often what happens is we get into this kind of negative spiral, negative loop with thinking that or thinking in general tends to be cyclical, that we can, look at a situation and think, I really don't know what to say, how to say that, what if they judge me because of it? I probably shouldn't say anything, but if I do, what should it be? And then it kind of just goes into this cycle of thinking about all the things that may go wrong, or why we shouldn't do something, why we shouldn't say something, and often worst case scenarios. So when we start to reprogram that, we want to consciously start challenging everything that we're saying subconsciously into a different perspective. So and something that I love bringing to people's attentions is the idea of, well, how often have you ever thought about the what ifs it may go right, the what ifs other than the worst case scenario? How have you thought about, okay, if someone does judge you, well, what does that mean on them? Rather than it being a reflection of who you are, maybe it's a reflection of who they are and what they're struggling with, right? So what the change kind of becomes is this internal dialogue where the subconscious automated response says, they'll probably judge me. And then the conscious thought says, well, it's okay if they judge me, because people are going to judge me, because no matter what I do, there are going to be some people that judge, and that's a reflection of them, and that's not a reflection of me. And if I'm going to be judged anyway, then, I might as well do something that makes me happy. And so we want to consciously be challenging the subconscious. And the quicker we become, the more we do that, the more we practice challenging or disproving the negative self-talk that is already so automated, the quicker the response will be. And the quicker that response will be, the more that becomes automated, just like a muscle memory. And something that becomes, really cool when it becomes so quickly that the self-doubt might be, I'm really scared, I don't know if I can go out there. And then straight away you say, actually, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. Everything's going to be fine. Just breathe, trust myself, go out and do whatever I'm, about to do, or say whatever I'm about to say. And it becomes that quick. We can begin to see the humor, if you will, in that old kind of negative programming, because a lot of that old programming is actually quite ridiculous, to be honest. It kind of brings up these ideas that are often based on very little proof or examples. One thing might have happened in our life, and so it'll just kind of own in on that experience as making it proof, rather than all the other reasons why something isn't the case. And so we want to, be finding the humor in that negative self-talk by realizing that most of the time it actually doesn't have the whole picture of what's going on. It doesn't know what you're experiencing. It doesn't know the way that you're wanting to experience, the way that you're able to go out and experience. And through that conscious kind of talk, through that conscious thought, we're able to shift out of the negative to just the type of thought that you want to be hearing, essentially.
I really appreciate everything you said. And I think I couldn't agree more. Like having, first of all, like having the knowledge that of like psychology and that other people come from their own pain and their own fear, right? And it has so much more, if someone's judging you, it has so much more to do with that person than with you. Like just understanding that just is just like, oh, it's just this relief, right? It takes like so much of that pressure off. And it's interesting that you said it's not about turning something off, right? That's how you started your whole response. And that's kind of been a theme lately that a lot of people have been saying on the show. And, you know, I don't believe in coincidences, right? I think it's something that like the collective needs to hear, or maybe I need to hear, or, you know, for some reason it's coming up a lot. And it's almost about that idea of like what you resist persists, right? Like if you're focusing on something so much and you're like, no, go away, like that thought's bad, like you're putting energy onto it, right? Instead of just kind of acknowledging it, being like, okay, you're there, I understand, I see that part of myself, but like I'm going to put my energy and focus over here on this new empowering thought, right? Instead of this limiting belief. So it's just, I just kind of wanted to call that out. It's really interesting that you brought that up because again, it's been like really recurring on the show. And I also like at the end, you were talking about, you know, maybe that's not the whole picture, or, you know, we tend to like, we tend to focus in on like negative things, right? And I think it's a survival instinct, right? It's we are wired to be living in caves and looking out for danger, and so we spot the danger, right? But that doesn't really translate well into our everyday modern lives, where 1,000 positive things can happen to you, or you can hear about in a day, and then one negative thing or one scary thing, and you just like latch onto that,
Yeah.
right? And you mentioned that you're a parent. I'm a parent too. I have an 8-month-old, and that's something that I've had to like revisit, right? Because there's so many fears that come up and anxieties with being a new parent. So it's so interesting, like catching these things and being like I don't know, like, did you just do that? That's funny. I didn't even know you could do that. Um, it's like, I don't know. For me lately, it's been like the SIDS thing, right? Like we just got this new book, and it was there. I was looking at the back cover, and it was written by these two women who both lost their 3-month-old babies to SIDS, and it's heartbreaking. And that's been like this anxiety in my head all week. And I was talking to my husband about it. He was like, "You need to just go like Google some stats, because it's going to put everything into perspective about like how rare that is, and you know that he's already 8 months and like almost clear of that. You know, so it's just about like." Again, putting things into perspective. So I appreciate everything you said.
Yeah, 100%. And I totally resonate with that idea on latching on, you know, to something, because as we do, you know, we want to, we're used to being in this kind of survival mode as we've kind of all grown up. And so we take so much of that like survival mode into our day to day, where we really shouldn't be in survival mode, where we shouldn't, you know, be going through these fight, flight, or freeze emotions. And yet, because we are hardwired to look out for the dangers, and often the dangers these days aren't physical dangers, but dangers towards our sense of identity. You know, so if someone judges us, well, that's an attack on us and me as a person, and so it releases those kinds of same kind of fears and worries and struggles, as though we were going to be chased by a lion. And so it's those emotional kind of struggles that are happening internally that's why I say, the inner work and whatever, because it's not an external battle. It's not something necessarily externally that is happening. And then there are there are constantly things externally that are going to affect us. I'm not saying that by any means, but it's often the realization that we can't impact so much our what's the word I'm looking for? Outcome, but we can impact our outlook on the outcome.
Hmm.
And I think when we understand that our outlook on whatever specific outcome is more positive, then we're going to internalize whatever the outcome was, whether it's a good outcome or a bad outcome, to be a more positive feeling outcome.
Totally. And I think that that's a skill that we can hone too, is learning to when bad because bad shit's going to keep happening, right? Just because you do healing work, or like, we're all going to go through challenges, we're going to face tragedies and adversities and heartbreak and all these things, because we're still living life, right? Just
Yeah.
because you're healed doesn't mean life's going to stop happening. But when you have this kind of mindset shift, you have these tools to be able to be like, okay, like, how am I going to adapt in this situation? Like, my husband's kind of going through it right now with like work, everything's crazy and collapsing, but the leadership team is so smart, and they're, instead of freaking out, they're like, well, we could try this and this and this, and it's just about getting creative, right?
Yeah.
And being adaptable. And and I wanted to like just comment on, you were saying that most of the threat today is on our identity. And I was thinking as you were talking, like, that's still a primal thing too, because we don't want to be cast out of the tribe, right? We don't want to be because that's a dangerous place to be,
Yeah.
right? And I think that ties back into what you were saying earlier about like so much of our self-worth is like not wanting to be judged by the group of our peers, because there's safety in numbers, there's comfort in numbers. We're what's the word I'm looking for? Like, we want to be in community. That's so much a part of being humans. Like, we're pack animals too. And I know there's a word for that with humans and not animals, but um and we are in survival mode a lot. It sucks, right? And it's part of it is like this modern life that we are finding ourselves in. And so it's so important to take time every day to put yourself back in a parasympathetic nervous state, right? To like come out of that, because no one can just live in that like high wire, go, 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 like high anxiety mode. Like, that's why we're getting sick, right?
Yeah.
So it's so important to come back down.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head that back in the day when we didn't want to leave the tribe, well, we just had that tribe, and that was kind of, we left there, we had nothing. Here, there's so many different opportunities to change country, change communities, change suburb, change area, change people, change job, that we can find, our people and our tribe. And it's not that if one group of people isn't serving us well, that it's a reflection on us and we're not good enough. It's just that we're not clicking with them, they're not clicking with us. That's fine. Let's go find someone and a group of people that do resonate with who we are, rather than trying to fit in to a group that you're not supposed to be a part of.
So true. Oh, that's so, so true. They're just not your people. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them, right? People, and you're going to find people, when you are your true authentic self, people are going to resonate with that, and you're going to attract the people. So you're really doing yourself a disservice by trying to fit in and dimming your own light to fit in with a group that's not right for you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So is there anything that we haven't talked about yet today that you like really want to get out there to listeners that you think is really important for people to hear?
I think possibly that one of the biggest things that people don't maybe realize is that our words, both internally and externally, the words that we use, hold a lot of power.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people underestimate the actual power that words have. And I say internally and externally because the words that we speak to someone else can have such an impact on the relationship, the connection that we have with that person. But the words that we say to ourselves, have such a massive impact in the way that we feel. For example, that like I've eliminated the word hate from my vocab because it's just not an emotion that I want to feel. If there's something that I dislike, I would much prefer to dislike it than hate it, because I don't believe that hate should ever be an emotion that we feel. There's certain things like hearing in my head if that something was a failure, because I don't believe that there's anything as such as a failure. As we say, in NLP, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. And so I want to be able to look at life and mistakes and setbacks as means to grow and to learn from. Ideas about good and bad or right and wrong, I try very hard, very carefully not to think of someone as a good person or a bad person, because their behaviors or their actions are reflecting what's going on inside. That doesn't necessarily mean that they themselves are good or bad, or that I'm good or bad, or what's right for me might be wrong for someone else. So, just very careful about the type of wordings that we say to ourselves and to others. And if there's a specific word that you become aware of that doesn't feel nice to hear, well, then maybe it's time to think, how else can I say this? How else can I word the same idea or the same concept without using a specific word that holds a lot of weight? Another example, might be should. The word should holds so much weight on the things that we should or shouldn't be doing, when we could be doing something, or we might want to be doing something, we'd like to be doing something, but to should be doing something just holds this pressure on something that is a must, but then we might not do it. And then if we don't do it, then we feel like a failure because we should have done it. Rather than, we could have done that, maybe I will do it tomorrow.
Totally. As Tony Robbins says, don't should all over yourself, right? I love that.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I think it's everything you said. I'm so the same way. And no one is inherently good or bad, by the way. I wanted to just say that when you were talking about that, like, no one is good or bad. We're all here incarnated as human beings, having a human experience. And we've been talking about, you say things and do things because you have a lens through which you view the world. And that lens is based on your past experiences. Right. And I think that just, again, comes back to, like, it's not up to us to judge other people, right? Just like we're not supposed to place blame on other people. And also, like, don't give other people that much power. Like, no one is responsible for your good mood or your bad mood except for you, right? Like, no one has that much power over you that they can ruin your life or even your day. Like, you alone hold that power. Another one that I just wanted to say too, that as you were talking, that I hear a lot is like, this always happens to me, or this never happens. And I hear that a lot with coaching clients. And there's like some friends and people in my life that it's like, anytime something bad happens, they're like, oh, this always happens. And it's like, well, yeah, it's going to keep always happening if you keep saying that, right? You're like putting that out into the universe.
I'm not that type of person,
Oh yeah, totally. That one too.
You won't be that type of person if you keep saying you're not that type of person.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's just how things are, right? Yeah, all of those things. So, and I think when you're first starting out with all this, it can be really overwhelming because you're like, oh, I have to like monitor every single thing. But like it becomes easier, right? Like you were saying, it becomes a habit. The more you start to just notice and be aware, and it's not about like, shaming yourself if you do catch yourself saying these things. Like, be gentle with yourself, but it gets like easier, right? It becomes it, and now, like you're saying, it's like once you're in that habit, if you hear the word hate, you're like, ooh, like that doesn't feel good. Like energetically, that doesn't feel good. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I knew from just everything you're about that we'd be on the same page and that it would be great. And I just think it's so important for people to hear everything that we talked about today. So I appreciate your time. I'm sure people out there are resonating with you and they're like, I want some of what he's teaching. So if they want to work with you or connect with you, where can they find you online?
So I would really love for anyone listening, if you're looking for your community, you're looking for a tribe online on Facebook, for other soul searchers, purpose seekers. I've got a great and growing community that is just really a safe space for other people to connect and to find our tribe. Because, like you said at the beginning, so often we're going through very similar internal processes, even if our external world is very different. It's our internal ideas about who we are and are we good enough, and all these kinds of fears and doubts and worries and whatever else are very similar. And so it can really help to just kind of have that support system and that community that resonates and understands what we're going through. So there's that Facebook community as well. But if you're wanting to read up a bit more about me online, you can go to my website. I'm sure you've got the links that you'll attach to this. And I'd love to just meet you, connect, have a conversation. 100%.
Awesome. Yep. All those links will be there. And yeah, if you're driving, don't try and write it down. Come back. It's always there. It's going to be evergreen. Thank you so much again, Ben. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. If you are listening, please comment, share, subscribe, like all the things. Connect with us both on social media. And if there's someone in your life that you think could really hear this, send them the episode. Maybe no one's thought to just kind of gently hint at these kind of things. And I think, like we've been talking about, knowing that someone else has gone through it makes it so much less isolating when you're going through it. So I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful rest of your day.